Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Distilling Books by Socrates, presented by SchoolRubric. My name is Wallace, and I'm part of the SchoolRubric team, and I am filling in for our Director of Professional Learning, Claire Springer, today, who is our usual host of Distilling Books with Socrates. She's doing a little bit of professional learning on her own, but I'm super excited to be here today talking about a topic that is super important. But for those folks who are tuning in and kind of wondering, what is Socrates Head of School? What's a books distillation? Let me just tell you, Socrates Head of School is this really innovative, unique organization that's thinking about how to reframe teacher education, the way we learn, the way we get better through distilling books, through asking the essential question, what would Socrates do if he were a head of school? So I'm really excited today. We have with us Dr. Cristiana Jurgensen, who is halfway across the world. She's in Saudi Arabia. This is incredible. And she wears many, many hats. But one of the hats she wears is that she is the third degree questioner at Socrates Head of School. Cristiana, happy to have you with us today. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role at Socrates Head of School.
Sure. Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Wallace. Like I said, my name is Cristiana Jurgensen. I'm a third degree questioner for Socrates Head of School. Greetings from Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, where the high today was 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're getting summer started off early. And I'm working with Socrates Head of School to distill books to help change the way we lead and learn in schools.
Awesome. Really appreciate you being here. I'm in Orlando, Florida. It's sunny, but it's not that hot as to where you are. So, yes. Happy to have you here with us today. And,
Sure.
One of the things I'm really excited about is that through SchoolRubric and through Socrates Head of School and through the many content pieces that we put out, we are able to connect with educators all across the world. So I'm super excited about that. And I want to dive into this distillation today about all learning is social and emotional. But before we even do that, Cristiana, I got to ask. I see on the website you are the third degree questioner at Socrates Head of School. And even when I go through the Socrates Head of School website, I see all sorts of interesting names. Tell us a little bit more. What does a third degree questioner mean?
Sure. It's if you've ever spent any time with a 3-year-old, that whole but why? But why? Why? And so that's kind of how I got that nickname, is that I would always be like, but why? Why are we doing this? Or why do we think this is important? To really drill down to the main motivation or the main point of what we're talking about. So that's how it all, it started off as a joke and became my title, I guess.
That's hilarious. That's so interesting. That's hilarious, actually. And, I think I might call my kid, who's a 6-year-old, he's a kindergarten, I might call him a 20th degree questioner, because I know exactly what you're talking about. The barrage of whys, and it's great, right? It's great when you kind of continually ask those questions, trying to get down to those core concepts. And I'm so happy that you're kind of incorporating that into kind of the character and the essence of Socrates Head of School. So let's get right into our distillation today. It's about all learning is social and emotional, helping students develop essential skills for the classroom and beyond, by Nancy Frey, Douglas Fisher, and Dominique Smith. And I know, Cristiana, it's said on the website, and I know from talking to you, you are an SEL advocate to anyone who will listen. So today's the opportunity for you to advocate for SEL for many folks who will be listening. So let's jump into our first question. The premise of the book appears very straightforward based on the title of the book, All Learning is Social and Emotional. What are some key arguments that the authors make in support of this overarching idea that SEL should not be compartmentalized, but embedded into all learning?
Sure, thanks. First of all, I think teachers are doing this already, right? Good teachers are being thoughtful about the way they plan their lessons, and they're incorporating these kind of things already. So it's not like this whole different thing that you have to do, on Tuesdays, period 3. It's something that you should be doing throughout the day, embedded into, whether you're teaching math or science or social studies, because the idea is that, if you have high levels of distress at the time of learning, you're going to be able to learn less, right? You won't be able to learn as much. So if we can spend some time really helping kids develop these skills that will fuel learning and reduce the stuff that gets in the way of learning. So that's the idea between integrating it into everything we do. And it's not, most teachers are already doing it. It's just to be a little bit more intentional and thoughtful about it.
Yeah, it's interesting, right, Christiana? We were even talking backstage before the live episode began, and we were talking about, some of our experiences as teachers and the fact that many teachers actually do SEL. They just don't know it. And I remember, thinking about, yes, I need my kids to be confident. Yes, I know their social and emotional state is very important. And certainly there was things that I did as a teacher to try to encourage that, but never explicitly to this extent. And I'm really happy that there's literature now, there's research now, folks are talking about the importance of this and being much more intentional about this. Before we jump to the next, sorry, go ahead.
Interrupt you. They did a huge study of like 250,000 or 270,000 students, and what they found is if you are intentional about teaching SEL throughout the day, they're going to have better social skills, or you're going to have less behavior problems, you're going to have less conduct problems, you're going to have less bullying, you're going to the emotional resiliency of students will be higher, and that all leads to greater learning of the academic part of it, which leads to, the higher test scores and all that other kind of stuff. So there's definitely, data behind it saying that this is something that's important and it should be embedded. And that's the way, we learn best, is if it's, in our day to day and we're using it. So absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. And that intentionality is so important. Mm-hmm. And, that's why we're here today for folks who are turning in. How do we become more intentional about it, right? How do we implement it with, some level of intention with kind of an eye towards some of those outcomes? And before we get into our next question, I just want to remind everyone who's out there watching, just make sure you follow and subscribe. We have Distilling Books with Socrates coming on basically every single month. We've got distillers from all over the world presenting practical tips that they can use, that folks can use and educators can use to improve their practice. And of course, we have all other great content from SchoolRubric. So make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. Let's jump into our second question. So one of the key components of the book is understanding more about how the hows and the whys behind building students' sense of identity and confidence in their ability to learn, overcome challenges, and influence the world around them. Christiana, I'm curious, what are some of your takeaways from the book on why educators should consider these aspects of learning as important? And what are some key strategies to develop these skills in our classrooms?
Sure. Thanks. Absolutely. I think actually they're in some ways even more important than some of the academic stuff that we spend our time on, right? Because that idea of like helping kids learn how to help others without giving away the answer, for example, or helping them really sit and think about what have I learned during this unit, or having them even have the confidence to sit down and take a minute and take a breath before they take an assessment and think up to themselves, okay, this may be hard, but I have studied and I've paid attention and I'm ready to do it, right? So just little things that the kids can do. That's what I think this book is just really so amazing, because for all of the 5 categories that they bring up, they give you, easy things that to do during the day. Maybe they take 30 seconds and it can really help a kid, with their self-confidence, their self-efficacy, their perseverance, their grit, their resiliency, all things that we know make for a great learner and just a great human being overall.
Yeah, and I want to maybe ask a follow-up question. I think I know the answer to it because you kind of mentioned it, but I want to just make sure that we bring it out and we elaborate on that a little bit more, because I know there's a lot of folks out there that are thinking, boy, there's only a limited amount of time in the day, right? And boy, we're accountable to standardized testing. We're accountable to grades. And if we really work on SEL and we work on non-core academic things, then that's going to take away the time from those core academics. How would you respond to that from kind of this as an SEL advocate and thinking about some of those research-based outcomes that you just mentioned previously?
Sure. I first want to say that everyone is already doing SEL or not in class. And let me give you a really easy example. You're about to hand out an assessment, right? So you could just say, okay, everyone, sit quietly, don't look at anyone's paper, here's your paper. Okay, now everyone turn over and get started. Or you could say, we're going to learn what we've learned, and we're going to see where we need to go next. And we're going to really take a minute, take a breath, and think that we're prepared for this and we're ready to go. So it just took literally 10 seconds for me to say that. And feel the difference, right? How a kid would feel going into an assessment being like, don't look at anyone's papers, this is timed, or as saying, we're prepared for this. It may be a little difficult, but your stuff and you can do it. That's teaching SEL right there. And it took 10 seconds, and you're doing it one way or the other. Either you're doing it positively or you're not doing it positively. So you might as well be intentional and do it positively.
Yeah, that's right. And those practical tips are exactly what we need. So for educators out there watching, those practical tips, hopefully people are going to be able to walk away with at least something. Great example. You know, Christiana, I was looking through the book and I was doing some research beforehand, and there was a quote in a passage there that really resonated with me. And I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and I think we're going to show it up on the screen, which is that a school that successfully weaves SEL into the fabric of its academic learning and its policies and procedures doesn't get that way by chance. School leaders, staff, and families collaborate with intention to create these conditions. The stakeholders confront troubling issues that just bubble beneath the surface. Doing this work and meeting its many challenges is only possible if the adults in the school are themselves SEL competent. So again, we talk about that intentionality again, right? We talked about that earlier. This really suggests that there needs to be buy-in, not only from teachers, but also parents and leadership. So the question here is, how can we create the type of buy-in and widespread approval of these SEL strategies as the authors have suggested in this book?
Yeah, there's a couple ways to do it, right? You can, depending on your school population, you can, talk about the data that shows how these kids perform better in everything, basically in their life. You can help them, ask them to come and be part of how you do this and explain how you do this. And you can spend time giving teachers the opportunity to talk to each other about how they do it. You can, start with data, then look for gaps where, for example, maybe are we having certain behavior problems that that could be addressed in a more proactive way, so it doesn't resort to that. So one of the big things in the book, the whole last chapter, or second to last chapter, is they really talk you through how to do this with a school by engaging all the stakeholders. The book provides you with some questionnaires you can give for parents and students and teachers to really get a baseline of where the community is with these topics, and then next steps to take. So, again, there is a ton of data on how even the World Economic Forum report that, they said there's 16 things that, kids need to be able to do for the 21st century. Of those 16, 12 of them are social emotional learning things. So, it's not new. It's just what is different is that we're being more intentional about it, and we're naming it, and we're spending the time to give the kids the support they need in order to grow in this area.
Right. And I'm going to put you on the spot again, because as you're talking about implementing and some of those strategies there, one of the things that's kind of coming in my mind about SEL is it a strategy or is it a program? Or is it both? And I'm curious to know kind of what your thoughts on it and how we should be thinking about SEL as a strategy, a framework, or a program, or both.
Although, those packaged programs are fine too, and those are helpful as well, it's way better for the kid and for the teacher and for the school if it's integrated, right? So while they can help, to have a greater lasting effect, it has to be embedded in everything that the school does. From the way they talk to each other in the hallway, to the way a teacher asks a student to help another student. The question is not like the program, but it's how we will integrate it. And I think that really starts with communication with teachers, right? The teachers having the opportunity to talk to each other about it and to say, here was a situation I had in my class today. Here's how I handled it. What might be another way? Let's think of 3 other ways I could have handled it. So that way we can really make sure we're weaving it into the way we talk to kids, the way we talk about kids, right, in meetings, the way we talk about parents, the way we talk about the community at large. So I don't necessarily see it as a program that you buy or something that you do on Tuesdays, third period. I see it as something that when you're planning any lesson, that you're stopping for a second and you're thinking of, the 5 areas, which I think we're going to show in a little bit, that make up, a whole SEL, not curriculum, but, philosophy. I think that would be the way I would like to describe it.
Right. And so let's segue right into that graphic. I know you had sent me one and we were looking through it, and it's very interesting. So, philosophy, pillars, whatever you want to call it. But I want to take a look at that, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. And not just kind of what they are, but more importantly, how they can be truly integrated, how they synergize, how they interact with each other. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. Okay. So there's 4 of them, right? And I'm 5 of them, sorry. And they're based on the 5 SEL competencies from Castle, the Collaborative for Academic and Social and Emotional Learning, right? So it's, you start with, their number 1 is this identity and agency, like who the kid is, how they feel about themselves and how they understand their influence on others, that agency part, right? Who I am as a learner and as a person and how my actions can affect others. So that's, that's kind of the base where you start, right? You start in and then kind of grow outward. The next one is that emotional regulation, right? And that's the idea of, can you name an emotion, for example? That's a whole part that they talk about is you just helping kids name, is it fear? Is it frustration? Is it loneliness? So using those words so kids can start to, recognize those emotions. They can start to cope with stress management. They have stress management, that kind of stuff. So that's the emotional regulation. Then you go down to the cognitive regulation. And that's like kind of more like the traditional like school stuff that perhaps we know from before, in terms of like our paying attention, setting goals, resolving conflict. What tools for example, what tools do teachers have in their toolbox to regain a class's attention if they are off task? So that's that cognitive thing, goal setting, recognizing if something's hard, recognizing how to ask for help, that kind of. Then you move down to the social skills part. The pro-social skills, are they being kind to others? One that they talk about a lot that I love is, do we teach children how to repair relationships? Because it happens, right? Kids fight, it just happens. But, they need to be taught how to repair those relationships. And I think that's a great one. Or, how to have empathy, how to communicate how you're feeling, those social skills. And then the last one is the public spirit. So like that's now once we know who we are as a person, our emotional regulation, cognitive regulation, who we are amongst our classmates, then it's that bigger picture of who we are and how do we fit in the bigger picture of the world, courage, do compassion, do we, give our students opportunities to talk about social justice issues? Do we give them opportunities for leadership? Do we want them to do service learning, right? So I think if all of these together, if we can integrate a little bit of each one of them, throughout the day, without even making a big deal about it, but just doing it intentionally, I think at the end you've got this kid, right, who's learning all the really important things that whether they remember 3 + 5, they're definitely also going to remember how to be kind and how to talk about their emotions, how to ask for help. To have that they have ethical responsibilities to their community, that kind of thing. So I think it's integrated in a way that throughout an entire day, you would be doing just little tweaks in the way you teach to really focus the attention on this kind of stuff.
Right. And Cristiana, you've identified a few of those examples and a few of those tweaks already. But, we really want these episodes and these editions of Distilling Books with Socrates, we always want people to walk away with something pragmatic, right?
Sure.
So in that vein, can you share maybe 2 or 3 of the most pragmatic takeaways and lessons that you were able to glean through your distillation of all learning is social and emotional?
Sure, absolutely. I think what I would do is that when I was planning my lesson, I would just have like whether you do it online or however you do it, like actually create a category on your lesson plan that is SEL. It's just a good reminder for you and to make sure that you're doing it, and then jot in little things like, have you had the kids take a breath before they take an assessment? That's it. That you're teaching them SEL. You're teaching them to like focus themselves and to get ready to do something. For another example is maybe ask them after you do an assessment, is there something you learned about this unit that I didn't ask you about? That's it. Something simple as that. Then you really get to know what the kid remembered, what they found was important to them. You're teaching them to think about their learning, that metacognition piece. So I would just really put a little category on the side of your lesson planning to jot down a question or 2 about it. For example, do you give the students an opportunity to say, I feel uncomfortable about this, or I don't know this yet? Do you ask them those kind of questions? Do you say, can you stop and think about where do you want to go next with your learning? you heard this so far. What did you learn in this unit that is particularly interesting? And you may want to read a book about it. That's all it is, those little things. And then, of course, being intentional when you're picking the literature that you're using in class, right? For read alouds, there's so many great books. At the end of this book, they have chapter books, picture books, just all kinds of information that you can to help you choose wisely, right? You're going to do a read aloud anyway, so you might as well do a read aloud that helps kids grow in this area. So I think it's just being intentional about it.
Right. That was just a bucket of great tips. I learned some things myself, so I've now got some tips even for my kindergartner at home. So that is great. Thank you so much for sharing. And we are wrapping down our time today on Distilling Books with Socrates. We are trying to make these episodes short yet impactful, but we know that there is a lot more to learn. So Cristiana, where can folks go to learn more about your distillation, about Socrates Head of School? Where can they go to get more information?
Sure. Socrates Head of School.com is our website, and on it we have all of our distillations. We have all kinds. They're not only about academic books, right, but just about there's top 20 New York Times list books. There are some education books. There's books about changing the way you think about leading in a school. There's books about changing the way you think about learning in school. So it's a great kind of one-stop shop to learn more about what we do and how we can support schools through these distillations, or through professional development, or even through just having a conversation with another like-minded change maker.
Yeah, that's right. And so, you guys are doing some really exciting stuff at Socrates Head of School. I'm really excited to see as we continue to have these discussions and as you continue to work with schools, the change that we're going to see in a positive way in those student outcomes. So again, thank you to Cristiana. Thank you to all the viewers who have tuned in to today's edition of Distilling Books with Socrates, as we talk about all learning is social and emotional, helping students develop essential skills for the classroom and beyond. I want to remind everyone to like, follow, and subscribe so that you can tune in to our next edition of Distilling Books with Socrates and all the other great content that comes out from SchoolRubric. Cristiana, thank you so much again.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure, Wallace. I really enjoyed my time here. It was a great way to spend an afternoon. For me, it's afternoon.
There you go. Well, absolutely. We appreciate you taking the time and being with us today. Be well, and we will be in touch again very soon.
All right. See you guys later.
Bye.
Thank you for watching SchoolRubric on YouTube. Make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe in order to stay looped in on all of our diverse collection of shows, interviews, panels, tutorials, and more from educators around the globe. And visit us at SchoolRubric.com for even more great content, such as our online articles, Interact magazine, featured podcasts, and more. Thank you.